At this point, I'm convinced the safer I feel in a relationship, the more I've got one foot out the door. Like, I swear. Because, let me explain, because it actually makes sense. In my family system, and because of all the things that I went through in childhood and teenage years and whatever, but especially within the family system, being on guard, walking on eggshells, centering a man, and having to love and make excuses for that very man who was harming me, that was the norm. That is what I was used to. That's what I was taught. And so when I look back to either men who were total D-bags that I got involved with where I was not on my guard, I did not have one foot out the door. And if anything, I was like desperate for them to love me and justified the most bonkers things ever. Like my abusive ex. He was a hobo, like literal rode the rails for 9 years, brushed his teeth with his finger and dirt, literally did not have a toothbrush. And I found out the hard way. I was like, why don't you brush your teeth? He's like, oh, I brush it out back with my finger and dirt. I caught him eating dog bones. Like the dude, I mean, there's so much about this man that I made excuses for. I was like, yeah, well, you know. And then when he raped me and threatened to put videos he'd taken without my consent of me going down on him online, like all the long list of things that he did that should have made me leave, I excused, because that's what I learned in my family system. That's normal. I did not have one foot out the door with men that I absolutely should have been long out the door with. And so in this healthy, safe relationship that I'm in, I am always like, I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop. I got one foot out the door. I am thinking divorce, divorce, divorce all the time. But that's not actually what I want. I am more than ready to leave a healthy relationship on a dime, but a terrible, scary relationship. Anything that reminds me of what I grew up with, which was literally associating love with instability, love with fear, love with putting someone else and their shame and their feelings and their moods and everything above my own, even my own safety. That's what love was to me. So now that I'm not in a system where I have to operate that way, it's terrifying. I mean, it's amazing. And I'm so grateful for it. But it's weird as hell. It's like literally, it's like living in that thing from Stranger Things, the upside down world, whatever you call it. It's like being taught to walk on my hands my whole life. And now all of a sudden, through lots of therapy and healing, like a lot of it, I'm like learning how to walk on my legs. And I'm like Ariel, like, like I can barely do it. And it feels weird and it's really uncomfortable. And I'm not good at it yet. I'm getting better at it. But I just would rather, do handstands and walk like that. That's what I know. Discomfort is so comfortable for me. Peace is so not. And so, I mean, this doesn't mean that there aren't problems that come up in our marriage. We have been actively deconstructing patriarchy in our marriage. Actively, both of us, because we see it pop up all the time. I've talked about this before. I've given examples. I will continue to give examples of that. And as soon as we see what it is and we name it, and we're like, oh, that's what that is, then we take actions to course correct. Because we were both indoctrinated under patriarchy. We were both handed the same freaking blueprint. We were both handed the same script. And he's supposed to do this, and I'm supposed to do that. And so we don't even know where these voices are coming from other than indoctrination into like patriarchy, white supremacy, culture, capitalism, all that crap, right? Anyway, the difference between him and I, even though both of us being raised in, under patriarchy, I was raised in like a different form of patriarchy, right? I grew up in the South in the US. Looks very different there. It's all the same, but the details are different. And most importantly, I grew up with a lot of trauma in a family system I did not feel safe in. And he did not. He did not. And if you want reference, go back to the video that this comment is attached to about how I was so afraid that I was going to lose my relationship with my father-in-law, that he was going to lose his relationship with his father-in-law. I was so afraid of this big explosion because our dog ate a piece of furniture and I was a mess. He wasn't. He knew his dad was not going to abandon him over a piece of furniture or punish him till eternity. I don't know that. I'm not used to that. Like, I know that up here, but not in here. And my nervous system certainly doesn't know that. So I can tell myself all weekend, which I did, like, it's fine, Melanie. It's fine. There's not a problem here. You'll just buy a new cushion. It's fine. Tell that to my nervous system. Tell that to my trauma responses, right? So I just want to give you one example before I end this. Partly because I just want to show you what it looks like in real time. But I'm also doing it because I am curious if people want to know more about this. Even though Anthony was never trained in like trauma, how to deal with trauma, he seems to intuitively understand a lot. And I think he should share more of his experience dealing with me and my trauma with other people, but especially other men, because I'm sorry, but I don't believe that there's a single woman out there who's married to a man who doesn't have a lot of trauma from men, and it's going to show up in your marriage. So men need to learn how to deal with it. So one of our first like big arguments when we got married, because I hate conflict, shocker. And like I said in the video before, when I made my dad mad when I was 17, asked him if I could stay a little bit long at an eating disorder treatment center in Florida because I really wasn't ready to come home yet. He left me, told me to F off and find my own effing way home, and literally left me in Florida. My mom had to drive, 15 hours each way, 30 hours to come get me. Teenager. And then he never talked to me again until I sent him a birthday card and was like, hey. So that's what I come from. And my husband knows that. So when he saw what a mess I was over something that was actually really small, but behind it was a lot of small things that I had never mentioned because I'm so used to just biting my tongue. He could see that I had rage going on because I was not dealing with stuff. I was not being honest with him about a few things that were really upsetting me. And clearly it wasn't going away. And because I have been conditioned under patriarchy and in my family system that anger and especially rage are not okay, I just cried. I was just crying. I wanted to punch something, but I just was crying, rage crying instead. And he knew I needed to talk about whatever was happening. And he just intuitively went like this, babe, I'm not going to leave you. I promise whatever is happening, whatever you need to say, I'm not going to leave you. Just please tell me. And I felt so safe. I just needed that reassurance because I was having a serious trauma response. I can't tell him because I was so overwhelmed that this seemed like a divorceable thing, like what? I mean, we had just gotten married and I was like, oh, if I tell him, then we're going to get divorced. Even though I'm the flight risk of the two of us, I'm absolutely the flight risk. But I convince myself all the time in the beginning until I realized this man is so safe. And now I can talk to him about anything. I'm never afraid to have hard conversations with him at all because he kept doing this in the beginning. So I just told him and I was like, I just all of this and this and this. And you haven't called the prefecture for my visa and blah. And so we dealt with all of it. And then he said, and I'm so glad he said this, babe, I want to know what's wrong. I need you to trust me that I'm not going to leave you when you tell me that you're upset. I can't even have a conversation with you if you won't tell me. It's really hard for me to see you completely a mess and not even know where to begin to repair this. So please tell me I'm not leaving you. And he had to do that a lot in the beginning. And it's like, all I needed was that reminder. Oh, right. He's not my dad. Maybe he's not going to leave me in Florida. And after enough practice of this, I am so good at facing conflict head on because this man has helped me feel safe. And the more safe I feel, the more I'm able to have hard conversations. And the more hard conversations I have, the more that it's like the butterfly effect. Now I'm not afraid to have hard conversations with other people because I realize it's not life and death, that it's way more important to me. And my survival depends on me being true to myself than on controlling this person's emotions. This stuff is so hard.